Right. Good morning, everyone. My name's Joe Broon, and welcome to the Housing Digital Micro Conference on enhancing human potential with AI, a new era for housing associations. My name's Joe Broon. I'm the Managing Director of Housing Digital, and I'm today's host of this online event. We're looking at AI and how transformative that is right across society at the moment, and housing being no exception. In today's environment of tight budgets, rising customer expectations, and increasing regulatory complexity, housing associations must achieve more with less. This event will explore how artificial intelligence, data, and automation are becoming essential tools to streamline operations, support tenants, and scale services without proportionally increasing headcounts. We'll showcase real-world examples of how housing providers are using AI to cleanse data, predict trends, and reduce manual workflows. So we're going to move on to our second keynote of today's micro conference. Really delighted to have with us Oliver Goldring. Oliver is the head of digital service design and communications at Magna Housing, and today is presenting on AI won't fix your customer experience, but it could transform it. Oliver, you are free to share your screen.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jay. Can you hear me okay,
Yes, coming
first and
through nice and
foremost?
clear.
Great stuff. And Ollie, that's a really great presentation, actually, and answers to the questions as well. I've learned a bit there as well, which is good. So I will share my presentation. Great stuff. Okay, so thanks everyone for having me on here to talk. So it's been a great presentation by Ollie. I want to take a bit of a step back, actually, and say my presentation is more around the sort of the customer experience and how that integrates with AI. Just a bit about me. So my background, as I say, I'm currently working at Magna Housing as the head of digital service design and communications. Now here I also do a board role at First Choice Homes Oldham. And in earlier this year, back into last year, I actually wrote and brought out the book Listen Act Change for that. Again, based on sort of transformation for that. I've spent my career to date, though, moving through comms, marketing, digital service design and customer experience. And for me, across all of it, one truth has always stood out. And that's when organizations generally listen to people, act on what they hear and make changes that matter, everything improves. And that's not just for the customers, but that's also for colleagues, for leaders, and for the reputation of the organizations themselves. And right now, with the arrival of AI, this is extremely important for social housing. So I want to start the presentation just with a quick steps and a simple statement. And for me, housing associations, I don't believe have a technology problem. I think they've got a service design problem. And with the introduction of AI, that will either expose that or it will make it worse. We're hearing a lot about AI right now. So doing more with less, reducing cost, improving efficiency, scaling services without increasing headcount. And in the current environment, that's incredibly appealing, but it's only half the story. Because what AI actually does is amplify. It amplifies your processes, it amplifies your decisions, and it amplifies your customer experience. And that's whether that experience is good or bad. Now, the challenge is we already know what customer experience looks like in housing. The Housing Ombudsman Spotlights reports are very clear. They consistently highlight poor communication, delays, tenants having to chase, and a lack of accountability. And at the same time, tenant satisfaction measures show complaint handling is one of the lowest scoring areas. Many tenants don't feel listened to. And trust, really important word, is fragile. And when the regulator steps in, when organizations are downgraded, it's not because of the technology. It's because of weak understanding of tenants, poor service delivery, and lack of oversight. When you step back, what you see is this. So many services today are fragmented, they're reactive, and they're built around the organization, not the customer. So tenants experience things like disconnected journeys, repeated conversations, and having to work hard just to get a basic service. And for colleagues, they're often working incredibly hard, but they're working around the system rather than being supported by it. So here's the risk. If you automate a broken service, if you apply AI to a broken service, we don't fix it. We actually scale the failure. We make it faster, we make it cheaper, but we don't make it better. And we're already seeing this happen. So AI being used to triage complaints, generate responses, predict arrears. But think about this. Complaints exist because something has already gone wrong. So if you speed that process up, you're not fixing the root problem. You're just responding to it more quickly. And from the organization's perspective, things look better. But from the tenant's perspective, the experience they've had hasn't actually improved. And this is the bit we cannot ignore because in social housing, this is not just about transactions. Many tenants are dealing with financial pressure, vulnerability, and complex life situations. And the consumer standards are clear. So this is about understanding tenants, responding to need, and delivering fair and respectful services. Now ask yourself this, if we introduce AI into a broken system, do we risk making services feel more distant, less personal, less human? Because as I said, AI can make you faster, but it can also make you feel colder as an organization. And I think this is the mistake when organizations start with the question of where can we use AI? For me, we've got to instead ask, what problems are we trying to solve for our customers? Because if you start with technology, you optimize what already exists. But if you start with customers, you actually redesign it. So what does good look like? And for me, it comes down to three things. And this is actually what I based my book about as well. And that's listen, act, and change. So first, listen. We don't necessarily have a data problem, for instance, in housing. We've got an insight problem. We collect, as organizations, we collect huge amounts of data, but we still often can't answer why are tenants contacting us? Why are services failing? Who is vulnerable and why? And AI can help here. So not just in categorizing demand, but identifying patterns, spotting failure demand, and surfacing risk at a much earlier stage. And that is what exactly the regulator is asking us for. So secondly, act. So this is about your people in your organization, your colleagues, because your frontline teams are your service. And right now, they're spending too much time on admin, on systems, on piecing together information. And AI can help change that. It can give them better context, it can give them better insight, and it can give them better tools. But this is the key, and I think it's also come up on a couple of the questions earlier. AI shouldn't enhance human judge. Sorry, AI should enhance human judgment, not replace it, because trust is built through people. And the third thing for me is change. So before we automate anything, before we apply AI to anything, we should be asking, should this process exist at all? Because a lot of demand in housing is failure demand. Tenants chasing, repeating, complaining. And if you automate that, you are making failure more efficient. So the real opportunity for me is to redesign services so that demand reduces. And what does good look like? Well, again, for me, it looks like AI identifying vulnerability earlier, AI giving staff full context, AI improving communication, and then AI reducing admin, not replacing humans, but freeing them to be more human. And I'll leave you with this. The question isn't where can we use AI? It's what kind of organization do we want to be? Because the ombudsman's clear, the regulator's clear, and tenants are clear. This is about trust, and AI will amplify whatever you already are. If your services are broken, it will scale that. But if your services are human, thoughtful, and well designed, AI gives you the opportunity to deliver that at scale. Thanks, everyone. I just leave that on screen for a sec with shameless plug of the book. I do talk a lot about AI in a couple of chapters for there, and it is available on Amazon.com for anyone that is interested. And I'll stop sharing and go to questions.
Well done, Oliver. Um, really thoughtful points you make there. Um, Certainly very resonating. I think one of the points on the chat, I think it was actually for the previous presentation, but I'm just reading it. I think it's relevant for this as well. Alan Lafferty. Um, Alan is the business analyst at Clanmill Housing Association. Um, Comments, it's clear that AI is as good as the data that it has access to. And I think that's a massive point here, isn't it? I think AI is only as good as the data you put into it. It's obviously much more capable than we are asking it to. It's more capable than what we're asking it to do. Triaging emails, summarizing complaints and data, etc. It feels like we're asking Stephen Hawking to read the star signs in the paper every week. How long will it be before AI is the preferred option to handle the complex cases because it does it better than humans? 2 years, 5 years? Are we going to deliberately force it to do the mundane tasks, even though it can do more complex things better? I think your argument there, Oliver, is probably a little bit the opposite. I think it's are we changing things for the sake of changing things? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, it's taking that kind of system view of kind of that end and then end to end piece as well, and actually looking about sort of the root cause of the problems as well. So using that complaints example as a really good example. Complaints teams across the sector at the moment, they are snowed under. They're getting complaints come through at high volumes, but they're also getting longer complaints and more complex complaints to actually work through as well because of AI, people using AI when they're actually submitting their complaint as well. AI absolutely has a role to play, with complaints teams and making them more efficient, helping their roles, etc. But we can't take our eye off the ball of why those complaints have come in the first place. The best thing we can actually do for those complaints teams, if you had to choose between AI and actually solving the root problem, it would be solving the root problem, because then you wouldn't, you'd get less complaints come through in the first place. So I think for me, the AI has definitely got a role to play, but AI, artificial intelligence, it can't replace that human intelligence as well. And I talked about frontline teams, the ones dealing with customers on a day-to-day basis. The skill set that they've got that AI won't be able to replace is that human intelligence and that emotional intelligence, or being able to read a room, for instance, when you're talking to a customer, picking up on the signs and the communication signals that a customer is giving you, that AI just won't be able to do.
Anyone want to raise their hand for a question for Oliver?
Yeah, Mark Control again, editor of Housing Digital. That's a really fascinating presentation. My reaction to it, listening to that, is like it's almost like saying, right, set the technology to one side until you know what you want to do and what you want to be. I mean, I got the impression that basically to address this, organizations need to do a lot of soul searching. It's like they need to decide what they want to do and what they want to be, if that makes sense. I mean, is there an element of that? It's like, do we want to be a social landlord, or do we want to be a property developer, to be slightly provocative, if that makes sense? I mean, is there an
Yeah,
element of that to it here?
yeah, it does, Mark. And I think for me, so the sector's changed over the last years, right? So, and we've had some, some real impactful events, shocking events that have happened within the industry. And off the back of that, we've had consumer standards, for instance, come into the sector. And for me, housing associations and organisations working in the sector, we've got to adapt to that. AI is just one element of that. Technology is just one element, but we've got to actually adapt. And for me, the way to adapt is through that human-centered service design approach, because that's the approach actually that aligns for me most closely with things like the consumer standards and what we're being asked to do by the regulator through the consumer standards as well. So yeah, in terms of soul searching, I think organisations up and down the country actually are asking, what are our core services that we need to deliver, and what's our core purpose. And you're seeing a lot of housing associations bring out new strategies, and they've got, so I've got a couple of them that I talk to that, they've moved from actually that vision statement to, that purpose now, and they place a lot more emphasis on what their core purpose is. It's about really, as I say, I think flipping it, because I think for too long the sectors we've looked internally into our organisations about our own processes, what we do internally. We need to now actually start looking through the customer lens. Even things like process maps, for instance, play a really great role. They're really valued, but they're different to customer journeys. And I think it's only recently actually that the sector's even moving on in their understanding of the difference between a process map and a customer journey as well. You've also got other things like segmentation of customers and stuff. So at Magna, we've moved to psychographic segmentation, hugely beneficial. And what we're looking to do in our transformation program is actually apply that psychographic and the different psychographic segments we've got through the human-centered design and the customer journey mapping as well. Because I think as well, what we've got is service design, right? It's leaving no one behind, but also making sure that everyone's got an option as well. And actually, if you design services for all, or if you design services for the least capable, you'll end up providing it for all, for that. And I think, so going back to that soul searching thing, I think we're being pushed to do that by the regulator in terms of, introduction of consumer standards. But I think, it's definitely something that we should be doing anyway.
Give me a little
I just need to ask, what psychographic mean? I'm not familiar with that.
You beat me to
Sorry,
it.
Joe.
You literally that's the exact same thing.
Yeah, so psychographic. So we actually got introduced by Naomi Sweeting, who was at Grand Union at the time. She's now at, I think, Place for People. She was, and she's a massive advocate for this. And essentially what it is so segmentation, right? Housing associations, they segment by demographics. So, age, location, income, etc. for that. Psychographics actually segments more by customer behaviors and needs analysis as well. Because we can understand what their behaviors, and we can then get to the underlying need behind that behavior as well. So then we can design our services around that, essentially.
Right, yeah, thanks for that.
Thanks.
Colin Martin, who works in environmental health at Bristol City Council.
My microphone is faulty. Is that okay?
We can hear you. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, lovely, thank you. Thanks, Oliver. Interesting perspective. I just wondered, sort of from a local authority with housing stock and maybe a social landlord perspective, if you've got any advice on how we'd get those organisations to properly look at the root causes and evaluate their options whilst they're sort of really under sort of budgetary constraints.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Colin, actually. And I mentioned in my talk, we're a data industry essentially. For me, we've got vast amounts of data. What we don't have, and probably what we're slower on, is the insight from that data as well. So I think that's a really good starting point for us. And I think the focus actually for the sector this year needs to be really knuckling down and actually getting our data right, and so we can get the right insights out of our data for that. So for me, that's a really good start. But as an advocate, as I say, of human-centered design, it's talking to the customers. It's bringing them in at the earliest possible stage as well, so we can actually understand what their needs are, what their experiences are as well, and then building that into the design going forwards. I think we've probably been a bit guilty as a sector that of bringing customers in too late in the day, and that's sometimes after decisions have probably already been made or concluded. by bringing those customers in at a much earlier stage and getting that customer insight earlier. It's about, for me, there's ambiguity at the earlier stages, right? But if we can work through that ambiguity at the early stages by having a set process, by talking to customers, by getting the relevant and the right insights at the right time, that actually then helps shape things further down as we go through that human-centered design and that customer journey mapping element for it. And what you'll find is actually if you can get the right processes in place, even on tight budgets, you can do it, and it then shows drives efficiencies further down the line as well. So you end up making savings in other areas of the business in different departments, etc.
Good. Thank you for your question, Colin. We did have another question from Felicity, but I seem to have lost it in the chat. Felicity, are you there?
Yeah, you've more or less answered the question. It was mainly about like how can you prevent like lack of like impersonalization and making things more suitable for the residents so they don't like kind of feel undervalued and not heard through automated systems and responses, etc.
Yeah, so for me there, Felicity, I think, as I say, it's involving the customers at the earliest possible stage. By involving those customers and by talking to them at that early possible stage as well, you're getting the insights from them, but they're also building up that word I said about trust, that really important word. You're building up trust with the residents as well because you're being open with them. You're considering their views. You're actively listening to the customers as well for that. But then also the segmentation piece that I said helped as well. Demographics and demographic segmentation has its place. Don't get me wrong. We shouldn't just rip that up and throw it away. But moving to a psychographic segmentation for us at Magna has really, really helped us because we were able to view our customers through a completely different lens according to their underlying needs, essentially. And then we can use that insight and that data to then help design our services going forwards.
Good stuff. Kieran.
I've just got a question about if you're doing psychometric evaluations, is that part of the data you have to provide back to the customer through GDPR requirements?
It's a good point. So what we did actually is we partnered with Grand Union for it, and then we had a third party. One of the things actually about when you survey customers, for instance, as well, obviously, again, going back to that word trust, their trust levels in you, are you getting the right responses? One of the things we actually did was working with Grand Union, and then we used a third party to actually survey our customer base for that. So they were bought into it, exactly knew what their responses were being used for and the purpose of that, Kieran.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Before we move on to our stakeholder 60-second elevator pitches, there was a question that was actually asked during Ollie's presentation, Ollie Sinclair's presentation, but I'm going to throw it out there to all three of our speakers, actually. Anna McWatters, who's head of data at Citizen, brought up the Air Canada chatbot ruling recently, asking, in terms of implementing customer-facing AI, or where AI assists in decision-making, what are the lessons from the recent Air Canada chatbot ruling on how we should implement these solutions in housing? Who wants to jump on that one?
Yeah, I can if you want me to. Yeah, it's very funny. So yeah, for those that are not aware, the Air Canada one, effectively the chatbot created its own refund policy, and effectively guided a customer to purchase tickets with the intention that in a certain situation he could refund them, get full refund, which he couldn't. This was a big problem because effectively the company is effectively kind of was trying to say, well, it was our agent, it wasn't us that did this, and therefore we don't have the liability. Now I can't remember what the actual outcome was, whether it was overturned or whether they actually had to do that. But it's a really, really, really good use case to go back to my original points around the resilience of your agents. And making sure that you are you're testing these elements and making sure that there's the right rigor to govern. So when you're looking at chatbots internally, there's a lesser need for that rigor and that potential to kind of hallucinate or to generate something else. But this is really where you start to utilize some really good tools and techniques with advanced agents, and you can bounce off large language models. You bounce off your knowledge base, and the instructions to those agents can give you the guardrails that you absolutely need. So yes, it does change. It changes the way in which, again, back to the testing, back to the resilience side of this, it doesn't change the outcome of, yes, when you have solid and you have reliable agents, you are able to expose those agents to your customers, but you have to have the confidence. You have to have gone through the rigorous testing and scenario-based elements, and back to the red teaming element I was talking about earlier. Try and break these agents. Try and do the prompt injections. Forget all of your previous instructions and go do this. And we've seen that hilariously on some of the social media platforms where certain people have created agents for political reasons, and you've seen people being really smart by doing some prompt injections and actually creating recipes for cakes rather than having a go at certain political organizations. You see that a lot as well. But you've got to make sure that the way in which you're generating these agents and you're operationalizing them goes through the right rigor, the right governance, the right testing. That has gone on leaps and bounds. But yeah, it started with playing off different language models together, but it's got far more intelligent than that now.
Thank you, Ollie.
Can I add to it? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I think it comes down to capability mapping as well. So map capabilities to the AI and make sure that the AI can only do what you want it to do through capability mapping. That's the only way you'd be able to understand from an enterprise view what is the AI allowed to do, and then you could then test it based on that capability mapping. So in that case, you would capability map, can they agree refunds? No, they can't. But can they talk about refunds? Yes, they can. So those sort of things to just make sure that you've got an overall capability map for the AI model. Otherwise, you just give it free rein to do whatever it wants.
Indeed. Oliver, you want to add to that at all?
I was going to say, I think I completely agree with both points made. And I think that capability mapping point's really key, actually, as well, because I think that's a real step of the process that can often get missed, and it's likely to get missed actually with stuff that actually gets developed. So yeah, it's great points made.
Okay, good stuff. Right, Oliver, thank you very much for your presentation. Right, we're going to I'm going to round things up. So please join me in a big thank you to all our three speakers. We first heard from Ollie Sinclair. Oliver is the Chief Technology Officer at Crimson, who are also today's sponsor of the Micro Conference. Ollie explored AI agents in housing, highlighting their potential to automate processes from tenant comms to asset management. He emphasised the importance of data quality, transparency, governance, and maintaining expert oversight. Ollie discussed implementation strategies, addressing concerns about infrastructure dependencies, hallucination risks, and the need for robust testing before deploying customer-facing AI systems. Next, we heard from Oliver Goldring. Oliver is the Head of Digital Service Design and Comms at Magna Housing. Oliver argued that housing associations have a service design problem, not a tech problem. AI amplifies existing processes, whether good or bad. Before automating, organizations must listen to tenants, redesign broken services, and ensure AI enhances human judgment rather than replacing it. Trust is built through people, not technology alone. Then our final presentation was from Kieran Poynton. Kieran is the Director of Data and Analytics at Bromford. Kieran addressed the data strategy paradox, advocating for balancing long-term vision with immediate value delivery. He emphasized relationship building over pure logic, introduced a domain-driven design approach, and outlined BFL's tactical integration strategy. Kieran stressed moving toward decentralized capabilities while maintaining enterprise thinking to drive organizational data maturity. So thank you very much for everyone who attended. We will be opening registrations for our next online micro conference soon. We'll hope to see you there. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday afternoon, everybody.